The story continues, explaining that the New Gate is a VR MMORPG using cutting-edge technology. In this world, players can adventure freely and choose from 7 unique species to create their avatars. They can become blacksmiths, wealthy merchants, or fight powerful monsters, with the game allowing everyone to do whatever they can imagine. One day, the New Gate became a death game, making it impossible for players to log out. Our protagonist, Shin, kept fighting to beat the game. We then see Shin preparing to fight the final boss of the game, with his support characters urging him to take care and expressing their hope to see him again. Shin fights the final boss, aiming for its head, but only manages to cut off its wing. The boss regenerates its wing, and Shin continues attacking. After a long fight, he chips down almost all of the boss's HP and finally defeats it with one of his skills. An announcement declares that the dungeon has been cleared and players can now log out. Shin, happy that it's over, uses a scroll to check if everyone can log out. He watches the names of players disappear from the scroll as they log out one by one, leaving him as the last player remaining. Shin then tries to log out himself but notices a gate appearing behind him. He thinks there shouldn't be any more events in the game. When he opens his eyes, he finds himself in a grassland that looks too realistic to be part of the game. He checks the menu and finds that he can still pull up windows. His stats have improved significantly, which he attributes to defeating the final boss. However, there is no option to log out. He checks for other players online, but his scroll doesn't work as he isn't connected to the network. Wondering if this is reality, he decides to use an item to locate his home base. On his way, he notices a giant walled city that wasn't there before. Upon arriving at his house, Shin sees some men trying to drag a girl away from his home. They take her out of the barrier surrounding the house, and a monster attacks them. The men flee, leaving the girl behind, thinking she will be killed. Shin saves her, telling her that he is home. Inside the house, the girl introduces herself as Tiara Lucent and thanks Shin for saving her. She asks if he knows her master, Shni, the acting shopkeeper of the Moon Sanctum. Shin recognizes Shni as one of his support characters and is surprised that the Moon Sanctum still exists. Tiara confirms this, but she can't share Shni's location as they have just met, and the men outside were also looking for her. She offers to take a message for him for a price of 1,000 jewels. Shin only has jail coins, which Tiara mentions are rare and valuable, used by kings and elders to amplify magic, worth at least 10 billion jewels. Shin reveals that he is a high human, which shocks Tiara as they went extinct long ago during an event called the Dusk of Prosperity 500 years ago. Shin realizes this world is 500 years after the game events. He thanks Tiara for the information and gives her the jail coin, which she hesitates to accept but is happy to hold. She explains that black-haired elves, like herself, are considered symbols of misfortune, attracting monster attacks and resulting in her being kicked out of her village. Her master rescued her and placed a barrier around the area where she has lived for a century. Realizing that her curse causes these attacks, Shin analyzes Tiara and finds she has a curse title called Cursed Gift. He uses his Purify skill to remove the curse, turning part of her hair back to silver. Tiara is ecstatic to see her silver hair again. Shin suggests she try leaving the barrier, reassuring her that he will protect her from any monsters. They walk outside the barrier without being attacked, and Tiara marvels at the sky, free from her curse. Returning to the Moon Sanctum, Tiara thanks Shin and gives him a letter of introduction to enter the Barrack Kingdom without inspection. She trusts him because he lifted her curse and seems capable. She promises to inform him when her master returns. Shin heads to the kingdom of Bari, where a soldier, upon seeing his letter, escorts him inside. The letter serves as an identification paper that can grant him an audience with the king. The soldier takes him to the Adventurers Guild, where Shin decides to gather information. He registers as an adventurer, surprised to find twin receptionists, Celica and Silica. Shin fills out the registration form and waits at the guild's tavern, learning it takes a whole day to make a guild card. Celica, helping at the tavern, brings him food and inquires about his letter of introduction. She verifies its authenticity, bringing him to the guild master, Barlu Hine. Barlu checks the letter, which resonates with another letter of introduction. Barlu explains the power and rarity of such letters, which allow entry into most nations without inspection and grant audiences with kings. He advises Shin to destroy the letter if he can't protect it, but Shin confidently states that he will be fine and mentions Tiara gave it to him because she trusted him and he won't let her down. Barlu understands and states that as men recognized by the moon's sanctum, they should do their best to get along. Shin agrees, and Barlu mentions that he should test Shin's skills. The scene then cuts to Shin and while lying in bed, he thinks about how rough the day was. He decides to try to raise his rank tomorrow after getting his guild card and goes to sleep. The next day, Shin goes to collect his guild card, wearing new clothes. He thinks that a bottom-ranked adventurer shouldn't dress so magnificently. Celica gives him his guild card and explains that there are 9 adventurer ranks, with SS being the highest and G being the lowest. Shin starts as a G-ranked adventurer. Celica explains that completing jobs earns points, allowing them to rank up, and states that he can take jobs up to 2 ranks higher than his own. Shin opts for the quest to harvest HK grass and leaves. Celica finds Shin strange, as Barlu recognizes his skills, yet he doesn't seem imposing. The scene cuts to Shin in the forest, unable to find any HK grass after searching for 3 hours. He considers it a beginner quest and is glad the monsters are weak, allowing him to take his time. He then notices a monster behaving strangely on his map and investigates. He finds a skull-faced Jack, a level 359 monster, attacking a wagon. He recalls guild members mentioning a troublesome skull-faced Jack and decides to take action. Shin attacks the monster, but it parries his strikes with a light-type weapon, unusual for an undead. Realizing it's a unique monster, he turns off his limiters and defeats it with a single strike, sending the monster's sword flying. Shin regrets not being able to use the sword but finds a gemstone as a drop item and thinks the adventure is getting fun. The flying sword lands in a castle, causing confusion. Soldiers ask Princess Ryan about it. She instructs them to call an appraiser to determine the sword's material and who threw it, recognizing the person must be powerful. Shin returns to town and notices injured soldiers. He inquires about them and learns they were attacked by a skull-faced Jack in the northern forest. Only 4 out of 12 soldiers survive. Shin realizes the wreckage he saw was theirs. The soldier mentions a sword flying into the castle from the northern forest and asks if Shin knows anything. Shin denies any knowledge, claiming he was gathering HK grass. The soldier asks Shin to report any findings and leaves. Shin is relieved no one was hurt by the sword. At the guild, Celica welcomes Shin back. He wonders if the commotion is due to the skull-faced Jack. Celica confirms and explains the suppression request is a top priority due to its proximity to the kingdom. Shin reports he defeated the skull-faced Jack and shows her the gem. Surprising her, an elf named Else arrives, asking Shin to stop teasing Celica. She introduces herself, and Celica whispers to her about Shin defeating the skull-faced Jack, shocking Else. Shin mentions he didn't loot the skull-face's equipment due to its poor quality. Else explains that retrieving Jack-class equipment requires high rank or significant funds. Celica takes the gem to be appraised, verifying its skull-faced Jack origin. Else explains that undead monsters spawn from the grudge and regret of the dead mingling with magic. The northern forest magic isn't strong enough for a Jack-class monster, making it unusual. Shin reveals the skull-face's level was 359, surprising Else and Celica. Else sends Celica to have the gem appraised immediately. Shin asks Else to keep his strength a secret to avoid attention. Later, at a restaurant, Celica asks Shin to share a table with someone. A pale man sits with him, wielding a legendary tier weapon with mythical tier power. The man introduces himself as Wilhelm Avis, a level 188 adventurer. He notices Shin's good gear and inquires about his background. Shin explains he is from the countryside and doesn't know local customs. Wilhelm, known as Wilhelm the Vampire for hunting undead monsters, attributes his alias to his mythical weapon, venom, which drains enemies' life force. People fear he might drain them unexpectedly. At the library, Shin researches the founding of Bear Kingdom, noting it was established 511 years ago, around the time of the Sunset of Prosperity. He hopes to find more records and realizes the races in this world are the same as in the game. Meanwhile, at the guild, a meeting takes place. Barlu announces the skull-faced Jack's defeat and the gem's appraisal. A knight is surprised that the person who defeated the monster left its equipment untouched. Else explains the equipment was deemed worthless. The appraiser confirms the monster's level was 359. Barlu sees this as a problem, fearing similar level monsters might have spawned. The knight is shocked, comparing the Jack-class monster's level to a king-class. A woman mentions a scout team has been dispatched to gather data on other monsters. Barlow instructs soldiers to stay vigilant. The knight inquires about the person who defeated the skull face and its equipment. Barlow mentions the weapon but withholds the person's identity. The knight reveals that the day the skull face was defeated, a sword flew into the castle, describing it as a powerful blade made of magus steel and mithril alloy with a permanent holy elemental enchantment, surpassing the kingdom's royal blade. And they can't just forget about the person who defeated such a monster. They also have a bit of a problem. The scene then cuts to Shin eating some snacks, thinking that getting information is hard. He notices a girl staring at his food and asks if she wants some. She takes one of the skewers. Shin wonders if the girl is lost, and she introduces herself as Millie. Wilhelm then arrives to get her, and Shin wonders if she is his child. Wilhelm explains that she is just a kid from the church's orphanage and is an expert at running away. He has to keep picking her up every time and is surprised she got so close to Shin since she is generally shy. Wilhelm tells Millie that they should go home, but before leaving, Millie whispers something to Shin. Later, at his inn, Shin wonders why Millie asked him to save the fox of the northern forest. He decides to check the forest since he has nothing else to do until Schnee returns. Before that, he needs to see Tiara. The scene cuts to Shin at the Moon Sanctum, telling Tiara that he forgot to leave a message for Schnee last time. He asks Tiara to tell Schnee that he would like to meet her if she recognizes his weapon, the Blue Moon. Tiara, surprised by the power of the sword, mentions it feels scary to use it. Shin explains that the materials used in making the sword include rare and legendary elements like Ocean Trasher Scale and Black Death Dragon Fawn, which shocks Tiara. He assures her that if Schnee recognizes the blade, it means she remembers him. Shin gives Tiara some letters for one-way communication, which can find the recipient wherever they are. Tiara wonders why Shin doesn't contact Schnee directly with this item. Shin explains that he tried, but it didn't work, possibly because they are not acquainted in this world. Tiara tests the letter by sending one to Shin, which works. Shin gives her a bunch of letters, and Tiara expresses her desire to research these magic items as she aspires to become a magician. Shin leaves, and Tiara sends a letter to her master. The scene cuts to Shin in the northern forest, wondering what he is supposed to save. He hears a voice telling him to go away and realizes there must be a barrier. Strengthening his mind manipulation, he goes deeper and finds a shrine. Inside, he hears a cracking sound and discovers a little fox, poisoned and cursed. He heals the fox and notices monsters approaching, likely due to the barrier breaking. He fights and defeats the monsters using a spear but discovers two more fox statues that come to life. The statues are high-level golems, level 674, disoriented by miasma. Shin uses Shadowbind to immobilize them, but they shroud the area in darkness and attack. Unable to see in the dark, Shin is cautious not to use full power to avoid harming the fox. The fox shows a magic circle, providing some light. Shin uses Archbind to immobilize the golems and finishes them with his Thrust of Devastation skill. Shin then discovers the fox is an element tail of level 2011, a high-tier monster in the New Gate. He offers to take the fox with him, and it agrees. Shin names the fox Yaha, who likes the name. He considers that both the corrupted golems and the element tail are not part of the game and might hint at a way to return to his world. Meanwhile, Schnee receives a letter from Tiara and is surprised to learn her master is back. Shin, heading back to the guild, reflects on the unexpected encounters and decides to report to the guild but not mention Yaha for now. He explains the concept of a tamer and suggests forming a contract to keep Yaha's level and stats hidden, allowing them to stay together. Yaha agrees, and they form a contract. At the guild, Shin reports to Celica. After reporting, he checks the job board and finds an unranked job seeking a skilled successor, which intrigues him. The job is from the church orphanage, and since he plans to meet Millie anyway, he takes it. Shin arrives at the church, and a nun named Tria approaches him. He explains he is there for the job request and to see Millie. Tria brings Millie, who is happy to see Shin. Tria introduces herself, and Shin asks if this is the fox Millie mentioned. Millie confirms, and Shin tells Yaha to thank Millie for helping save her. Shin inquires about the job request, and Tria asks if he has a skill, to which he confirms. Skills were common in the game but seem rarer now. Tria needs someone to teach the Purify skill. Shin mentions it's tough to acquire, and Tria wonders if he can teach it. Shin agrees. provided she shares information and tells him about Millie's power. Tria is hesitant, but Millie vouches for Shin. Tria explains that Millie has the title of star composer and has accurate visions of the future, kept secret to prevent misuse. Wilhelm is their protector, feared by others. Shin accepts the job and learns that the purify skill is needed for the former priest's granddaughter, who might inherit the church. The scene then cuts to Shin waiting by the orphanage while Tria picks up the other sister. The kids are playing with Yaha, leaving Shin alone with Millie. Shin feels a bit sad that the children are not paying attention to him, but he understands as he is a stranger to them. Yaha returns to Shin because the kids were troubling her too much, and Millie takes Yaha for herself. Shin tries to say hi to the kids, but they are not too fond of him. A girl approaches Shin and asks if he is going to save them. Shin is puzzled and asks what she means. The girl explains that the nuns said they might get rid of the orphanage. Shin inquires further, and the girl mentions that the church doesn't have a priest right now, but a new one is going to take over. Shin wonders if Tria can't become a priest, and the girl states that they need a special skill to become a priest. Shin realizes that she is talking about the purify skill. The girl states that the new priest wants to get rid of the orphanage, but the old priest's granddaughter, Leia, might have a superior claim to the church. Shin understands that this is why Tria wants Leia to learn the purify skill. He questions why a priest would want to do away with the orphanage and asks what the new priest is like. The girl describes him as a pig who only cares about money, which tells Shin all he needs to know. Millie assures the girl that Shin will save them, putting the girl at ease. Shin then asks the girl if Millie is always right. The girl mentions that Millie always knows which shops have good deals and where the snacks are hidden. Shin realizes that Millie is careful about whom she reveals her ability to, thinking it's a good thing, and he pats her head. The other children are envious of this attention, and the scene cuts to Tria coming to pick up Shin. She notices that the children have become fond of him. Afterwards, Shin meets Leia, who is a little clumsy but hardworking. Shin mentions that he is going to teach her how to use Purify, but it will be up to her to learn it. Leia understands, and Shin asks where he can find a large number of undead. Tria suggests the Ghost Plains, and Wilhelm arrives, noticing that Shin is the adventurer who accepted the job. Wilhelm asks Shin how much he knows, and Shin states that he knows about Millie and the adventurer from the orphanage who helps them keep the secret. Wilhelm asks Tria if she should be this trusting, and Tria mentions that Shin doesn't seem like a bad person and has Millie's vote of confidence. Wilhelm asks Millie if she saw something, and Millie confirms she did. Wilhelm agrees to trust Shin since Millie says so, but warns that he will kill Shin if he betrays them. Tria and the others apologize for Wilhelm's short temper. Wilhelm then asks Shin about Purify, and Shin explains that Leia needs to defeat 200 undead over level 150 while holding the Holy Prayer Orb to acquire the Purify skill. He mentions that landing the finishing blow counts as a kill, so he will weaken the monsters for Leia. He also mentions that acquiring a Holy Prayer Orb is difficult, but fortunately, he has one. Tria and Leia are surprised by how casually Shin talks about this. Wilhelm decides to accompany Shin for safety, unsure if a novice adventurer can handle such a task. The scene cuts to Wilhelm meeting Shin outside the church and they head to a bar. Wilhelm asks if Shin is a chosen one, people born with skills, titles, and knowledge they shouldn't have. Shin wonders if this includes memories from a previous life, and Wilhelm explains it usually doesn't. Shin thinks the reincarnation system still works, as he has reincarnated within the game before but not in this world. Wilhelm tells Shin not to talk about being a chosen one openly, and Shin appreciates Wilhelm's advice. Shin then receives a letter from Tiara, who informs him that she has received a response from Shni, saying she will return soon. She asks Shin to keep her informed if he leaves Becht and mentions being scared of how many questions her master asked about him. Shin's letter of introduction starts to react, and it turns out Wilhelm also has one. The scene then cuts to them at the Ghost Plains with Leia. Shin gives her the Holy Prayer Orb, and they notice some undead. Shin uses a skill to stop them in their tracks, and Leia finishes them off with her heal spell. Afterwards, Shin and Wilhelm deal with the remaining undead, and Leia finishes them off. The group moves forward and encounters a seal placed by the guild. Wilhelm explains that the undead beyond this point are on another level and opens the seal. Inside, they split up to handle the undead, and Leia finishes them off. Shin notices that Leia has gained a lot of levels and mentions that it's natural since the monsters outlevel her by so much. He states that she will likely reach level 150 by the time she learns Purify. Elsewhere, Ryan defeats a skull-faced Jack, surprised by its strength. One of the knights with her mentions being worried about their other team, and Schnee decides to check on them. She finds the other team struggling and defeats the monster in mere seconds, healing the soldiers afterward. Schnee then searches the forest, happy that her master is back. The scene cuts to Wilhelm fighting a skullface, which Leia finishes off. Leia starts glowing, a sign of learning a new skill. After the glow subsides, Wilhelm asks if she's okay, and Leia confirms she is fine, stating that her mind was suddenly flooded with images of how to use Purify. Shin states that she must have been successful in learning Purify, and Leia is happy to be able to save the orphanage. Shin then notices a black mark of magic matter in the air, which Wilhelm explains animates undead. The magic matter drains power from weaker undead until they vanish, giving birth to a giant Skullface Lord. The Skullface Lord is at level 84, and Wilhelm and Leia are shocked. They think a creature of this level can destroy the entire nation. Leia mentions that they should be safe as the area has a barrier around it, but Shin is not so sure. The Skullface punches the barrier, causing it to crack. Leia can't believe this, and they try to run away, but the Skullface Lord roars at them, showing no intention of letting them escape. They get surrounded by undead, and Leia wonders what they will do. Wilhelm tells Shin they should break through and flee, but Shin states he will stay and stop the monsters. He releases his limiter, determined not to let the monsters roam free now that the seal is gone. He asks Wilhelm to take care of Yaha and Leia, casting a physical buff on Wilhelm to help him run faster. Wilhelm tries to take Yaha, but she refuses to leave Shin, so he decides to let her stay. Shin clears the way for Wilhelm to get away, and Wilhelm leaves with Leia. Shin then fights the undead with Yaha's help. The Skullface Lord roars again, replacing the defeated undead with new ones. Shin uses Thunderstrike to wipe out some undead, and Schnee notices the glow from his skill, heading in that direction. Shin checks his map, noticing it's full of monsters. He thinks he would have more options if Schnee were with him and notices a blue marker heading towards him, realizing it's an ally. He heads towards the blue marker and reunites with Schnee amid a field of flowers. Before he can speak, the undead surround them, and Yaha protects them with her barrier. Schnee hugs Shin before he can say anything. Schnee looked at Shin, a mixture of relief and confusion in her eyes. "Do you have something to say to me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Shin sighed, knowing that his words would fall short. "I'm sorry for abandoning you," he began, his voice heavy with guilt. "And thank you for watching the shop." He paused, seeing the look in Shnee's eyes. This wasn't what she needed to hear. Taking a deep breath, he added, "But most importantly, I'm home." A soft smile broke through Shnee's stern expression. "Welcome back," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought you would never return." Shin couldn't shake the feeling that ending the game should have wiped his save data, including Schnee and his other followers. Just then, Yaha ran out of power, collapsing to the ground. "We need to deal with the monsters first," Shin stated, urgency lacing his words. "Let's fire off a combination attack." With a nod, Schnee prepared herself. Together, they launched a spell called Sanctuary. The spell healed Yaha and annihilated the weaker undead, but the Skullface Lord remained unscathed. Without hesitation, Shin moved swiftly, cutting the Skullface Lord in half with a single strike of his sword. As the creature lay dying, it spoke, "Give me this power." Shin's eyes widened in surprise. Did that monster just talk? He muttered to himself. "Are you all right?" Schnee asked, concern etched in her features. "I'm fine," Shin replied, though his mind was still reeling. He hadn't learned anything about the monster, but there was no time to dwell on it. "We need to talk," he said, leading Schnee to a quieter place. Once there, Shin turned to her. "Do you remember sending me off to defeat Origin?" Schnee nodded. "I do. I defeated Origin, and that should have ended everything. But then these huge doors appeared in the dungeon boss room, and when they opened, I lost consciousness. I woke up in a field and discovered that I had traveled 500 years into the future." Schnee's eyes widened in shock. "The dungeons have disappeared without a trace. When the other players' support characters started saying that their masters vanished, I knew you must have cleared the dungeon. But it was strange that we still remained here when we should have disappeared with the players. We decided to look for our master, but the seismic shift threw the continent into chaos, and we split up to work separately. I returned to the Moon Sanctum." Shin nodded, this aligning with his research. Please, stop calling me your master. It will cause a fuss if someone hears a legend like you addressing me that way. How should I address you, then? Shini asked, a hint of a blush on her cheeks. Just call me by my name, Shin suggested. Shini hesitated but then said softly, Shin. Hearing his name from her lips brought a warmth to his heart. What are you planning to do now? Shini asked. First, I need to visit the sacred site I read about in the kingdom's library, Shin replied. Have you ever been there? I have, but only for a cursory investigation. I don't know what it's like inside. I'll have to check it out myself then, Shin said. Once I find a way to return to my world, I'll leave. Shini's eyes dimmed slightly. I knew you would say that. Shin shifted the conversation. How much do you remember from when this world was just a game? I remember everything from the day we descended into this land until the very end. I'll never forget it. I became more self-aware around the time you and the others called it a death game. Until then, it felt like watching a video or observing from above. Shin's heart ached at the thought. You must have known you would disappear after we logged out. What were you all going through back then? It would have only troubled you if we said anything. We weren't completely autonomous back then. We couldn't have done anything even if we wanted to. Shin sighed. Knowing you were self-aware makes me second-guess everything now. I know you would have fought even if you knew, Shini said softly. You're right, Shin admitted. We made a promise. Shini smiled. Let's stop this sad talk. We'll have a party once we return to the Moon Sanctum. She then noticed Yaha. Who is this little fox? Shin introduced Yaha. This is Yaha, my partner. She's an element tail. I knew she wasn't an ordinary spirit as soon as I saw her tails, Shini remarked, intrigued. Shin looked at Yaha, noticing she now had 3 tails. Good morning, Shin, Yaha greeted, her voice clear. Shin was taken aback. You can talk? My head cleared up when that black stuff disappeared, Yaha explained. Shin pondered this. The shrine was surrounded by skull faces, and the lord he defeated must have been their leader. Yaha, don't talk in front of others. Can I speak to you with telepathy? Yaha asked. Shin nodded. Yes, that's fine. Shini observed Yaha's tails. What are we going to do about the 3 tails? Yaha, can you merge your tails into one? Shin requested. Yaha complied, and Shin instructed her to stay like that around others. She agreed. Shini found Yaha adorable. Would you like to pet her? Shin asked. Shini nodded eagerly. I would. As she petted Yaha, she marveled at Shin's knack for surprises. No one in the game has ever tamed an element tail. Only you could pull off something like this. Shin chuckled. Weakening an element tail is no easy feat. We can't afford to let our guard down around these monsters. We should get going, Shin said. I sent my companions ahead without me. If we hurry, we might catch up to them, Shini suggested. Shin agreed. I'll run as fast as possible. They left quickly, and elsewhere, Leia asked Wilhelm if Shin would be all right. He should be. He's strong, Wilhelm reassured her. Suddenly, he noticed something approaching at incredible speed. Is it a monster? Leia wondered. Wilhelm prepared to protect her, but they soon realized it was just Shin and Shini. Don't scare us like that, Wilhelm chided. Meanwhile, Ryan investigated the site where Shin fought the Skullface Lord. Her soldiers reported that after hearing a mysterious voice, the hordes of Skullfaces vanished, and a healing light cured their wounded. Ryan was curious about who could have caused this. One soldier presented a sword he found at the site, etched with a figure of a falcon at the hilt. He recognized it as the work of a legendary blacksmith known as the Blacksmith, rumored to be a high human. Ryan was shocked. High humans are supposed to be extinct. The soldier was unsure but clear that someone extraordinary was treating these powerful weapons as disposable. Ryan mused that the Blacksmith was the supposed owner of the Moon Sanctum. She decided to ask around once they returned to the kingdom. What will you do if a high human has really returned? The soldier asked. I'd like to duel him, Ryan replied with a smirk. I wouldn't mind marrying him either. The soldier warned her not to rashly challenge this person. I'm not that unreasonable, Ryan retorted. Back with Shin, Wilhelm demanded an explanation. You came here with Shini Razor, who never bows to anyone. What happened? Shin explained that Shini had defeated the Skullface Lord. Wilhelm, still suspicious, pointed his spear at Shin. I saw you exert unbelievable magic. Stop acting like you did nothing. You must have wreaked havoc back there. How do you know this? Shin asked, perplexed. Wilhelm, growing angrier, launched a series of attacks. Shin dodged deftly, tries to calm Wilhelm down. Wilhelm, please listen, Shin says, holding his hands up in a placating gesture. I know this is all very strange, but I'm not your enemy. Wilhelm stops his attacks, panting heavily, and glares at Shin. You need to explain everything, right now, he demands. Shin takes a deep breath and begins to recount his story. He explains how he woke up in this world, 500 years in the future, after defeating Origin. He tells them about his research, the anomalies he discovered, and his encounters with the undead. Schnee corroborates his story, adding details about the state of the world and their own experiences. Wilhelm listens intently. Wilhelm demands that Shin stop fooling around and explain everything. Shin reveals that he is a high human and Schnee's master. Wilhelm thinks this explains Shin's immense magic power. Shin mentions that he held back during their last encounter and then inquires if there are any records about high humans. Wilhelm responds that they know high humans were incredibly strong and had extreme skills. Some people have their own lofty stories about them, and Shin realizes that things could get complicated if others discover his true identity. He tells Wilhelm he's a blacksmith and offers to reforge his spear, adding anything Wilhelm desires, but Wilhelm declines. Leia wakes up, surprised to see Shin, and is glad he escaped from his predicament. She notices Schnee, who introduces herself, surprising Leia. The group then continues their journey back to the kingdom. Shin tells Wilhelm that they will part ways at the gate, and Wilhelm agrees, noting that anything that happens in the church now is none of his business. Upon arriving at the kingdom's gates, Shin gives Wilhelm a message card for emergencies, but Wilhelm refuses, not wanting to involve Shin further. Shin insists, saying he can't abandon the first friend he made and the children Wilhelm is trying to protect. Reluctantly, Wilhelm accepts the card. Schnee comments that Shin hasn't changed. He never boasted about his strength and always protected the weak. The two of them arrive at the Moon Sanctum, and Shin mentions he is hungry. Schnee suggests they have dinner together. Tiara arrives excitedly, mentioning someone wanted to meet Schnee, but notices Schnee is already with Shin. Shin explains that something happened, and they should eat first. Tiara is surprised that Shin will join them for dinner and wonders why. Schnee reveals that Shin is the owner of the Moon Sanctum. Tiara is shocked, realizing Shin is the legendary high human. Shin reminds her he mentioned this before, and Tiara apologizes for treating him so casually. Shin tells her not to worry about it and assures her he won't kick her out. Shin then explains Yuzaha, a monster, can speak, surprising Tiara even more. During dinner, Tiara comments on the unusual dishes, noting Schnee seems to have gone all out. She sees an aura emanating from the food and wonders about the ingredients. Shin, unable to see the aura, lists the high-end ingredients: idea fruits, topaz pears, blood radish, KMA onions, thermalon, or king meat. Schnee explains that these ingredients often contain remnants of mana or life force. They enjoy the meal, and Shin learns that the support characters have gone on to live their own lives. Schnee reassures him that they understood it was best not to worry about him. Tiara, now drunk, tells Shin he worries too much and claims she can see two of her masters. Shin, noticing she is a lightweight, helps Schnee put her to bed. Later, Shin wakes up at night feeling something heavy on him. He finds Schnee sleeping next to him, crying and calling his name. He wipes her tears and apologizes, unsure of the meaning behind her tears. The next morning, Shin notices Yuzaha has turned into a girl and, embarrassed by her nakedness, gives her a typical Element Tail outfit from the game, which adjusts to her size. They go outside, where Schnee is surprised to see Yuzaha can transform. The four of them have breakfast, and Shin asks Yuzaha why she was at the shrine. She explains it was the least uncomfortable place, and Shin asks about a symbol inside the shrine. Yuzaha doesn't know, and Shin thinks it might have been something to slow symptoms and provide relief. He then asks Yuzaha about people disappearing 500 years ago, but she doesn't know since people rarely visited. She recounts how she was napping when a natural disaster struck, and she tried to prevent it, causing her great pain. Just when she thought she would die, Shin saved her. Grateful, Shin says it was thanks to Millie, and Yuzaha plans to thank Millie again. Schnee suggests they bring CFAL, an elven baked treat Tiara makes, as a gift for Millie. Tiara mentions that these treats became popular at their store. Shin reminds them that the Moon Sanctum isn't supposed to sell food, and Schnee explains that they couldn't replenish supplies because only Shin can open the armory. Shin mentions that he will make a few swords later to replenish the inventory. Schnee says there is something they should discuss. Shin wonders what it is, and Schnee reveals she would like him to meet Gerard. Shin is surprised that Gerard is still alive, considering it's been 500 years since the Dusk of Prosperity, and high beasts like Gerard typically live for only 50 years. Schnee tells him they should hurry, as Gerard probably doesn't have much longer to live and is waiting for Shin. She reminds him that Gerard united the various beast tribes and formed the Fair Beast Alliance. Shin recalls that Gerard was called the first Beast King. Schnee adds that the current king is the eighth one and possesses all the military might and leadership abilities needed to maintain peace, allowing Gerard to wait for Shin. Shin agrees that they need to see Gerard, but he suggests they travel normally since Gerard is not in immediate danger. He asks if they will be ready to leave tomorrow, and they confirm they will. Tiara mentions she will watch the shop as usual, but Schnee tells her she will be coming with them. Schnee explains that now that Shin is back, they don't need to be tied to this location. Tiara is confused, and Shin clarifies that they will be bringing the shop with them. Tiara doesn't understand what he means, but Shin tells her not to worry about it, stating that it will be good for her to travel with them now that she can leave the place. Tiara agrees. Shin then mentions that they should start getting ready and will need supplies. Schnee plans to report about the Skullface Lord to the capital first. Shin states he will head to the guild after making some swords and will look for a job in the direction of Farnay to rank up. Schnee asks where they should meet back up, and Shin says he will let her know via message card. Schnee suggests forming a party so they can use telepathy. Shin forms a party, and Schnee tells Tiara that she should use this opportunity to register as an adventurer. Shin invites Tiara to come with him. The scene then cuts to Tiara and Shin in town. Tiara wonders if it's always this crowded here, mentioning that she's only heard stories about this from customers. Shin thinks she is like a kid visiting a theme park for the first time and asks her not to get too excited or she might get lost. Tiara says she is not that excited. Shin then suggests they finish their business at the guild first and then use the rest of their time freely. Tiara tries to lead Shin to the guild but admits she doesn't know where it is, so Shin takes her there. At the guild, Celica tells Shin that he has advanced to rank E. Shin is surprised since he hasn't finished a single quest yet. Celica explains that his promotion is due to his defeating a high-level Skullface and dealing with a massive Skullface outbreak. His report during the guild survey also proved to be accurate. She mentions that personally, she would advance him to rank A, but Shin understands that this would not be well received by other adventurers. Celica then asks about his relationship with Tiara, and Shin explains that they are traveling together and he thought of signing her up as an adventurer. Celica notes that they were holding hands like a couple, which embarrasses Shin. Shin asks Celica if she has any information on the Holy Land destroyed during the Sunset of Prosperity. Celica says only B rank or above can acquire such information, so Shin decides to ask when he ranks up. He mentions he is going to Farnay and inquires about any quests in that direction. Celica finds a quest to escort a horse carriage to Baron, which Shin accepts. She tells him the departure is today at noon and that there are already 2 adventurers on the quest, so he should join them on time. They leave the guild, and Tiara mentions there's some time before her guild card is finished. Shin suggests they walk around the city until their meetup time in the afternoon. They explore the town together, and Tiara has a lot of fun. Later, they head to the church and notice Leia outside. Leia wonders who Tiara is, and Tiara introduces herself as a helper at the Moon Sanctum. Leia is excited and asks if she knows Schnee, to which Tiara replies that Schnee is her master. Leia is thrilled and asks Tiara a bunch of questions before they head inside. Millie is glad to see Yaha again, and Shin comments on her energetic appearance. Millie explains that she's happy the orphanage isn't shutting down and thanks Shin for his help. Leia adds that because of Shin's assistance, she was appointed the next priest of the church and expresses her gratitude. Shin asks her not to worry and inquires about Wilhelm, learning that he is out checking on the priest from last time. Wilhelm mentioned he couldn't let things go as they are. Shin thinks this sounds typical of Wilhelm, and Tria hopes nothing bad happens. Shin gives Millie and Leia charms with different kinds of magic attached to them, and they thank him. The kids notice Shin and ask him to play with them, and it's clear they've warmed up to Tiara too. The scene cuts to Shin and Tiara leaving. Leia apologizes for the trouble caused by the kids, but Tiara says it was fine, mentioning it was her first time dealing with kids. They collect Tiara's guild card, and Tiara is happy to become an adventurer. Shin says it's time to take the Moon Sanctum with them, which Tiara finds strange. Shin explains that as the owner of the Moon Sanctum, he can take it with him. They go to a secluded place where Shin shows Tiara a crystal with a teleportation spell attached to it. Using it, they can teleport anywhere they've been before. Tiara is amazed and wonders if Shin made the crystal. Shin says he can create as many as he wants as long as he has the materials, which Tiara expected from a legendary high human. They teleport to the Moon Sanctum, and Tiara finds the experience weird. Shin turns the Moon Sanctum into a pendant, calling it the portable version. They then head to the quest location and introduce themselves to the other adventurers, Tsubaki and Gonnak. The merchant they are supposed to guard arrives and says he will be counting on them. They head out, and meanwhile, the king at the palace receives word that the Moon Sanctum has disappeared. He is shocked as the Moon Sanctum is an immovable building that has existed since the sunset of prosperity, and its disappearance is a significant problem. The princess asks if there is any word about Shni, and the ministers report that she is heading to the castle and will arrive within the day. The princess notes that they know too little to make a decision and suggests waiting for Shni, which the king agrees to. The scene then cuts to the carriage, and Gon asks if they have ever killed a person. Tiara is confused by the question, and Shin explains that in an escort mission, they might have to fight humans. He mentions that there is a greater chance of being attacked by bandits than monsters. Tsubaki says people underestimate her due to her appearance, but she has killed many bandits. Shin finds this encouraging and suggests they get to know each other's abilities to help them fight together. Gon reveals he is an A-rank adventurer and a samurai, not skilled at magic. Tsubaki is a brawler and an E-rank adventurer who can use support magic to enhance speed. Tiara is an alchemist and can use a bow and a sword. She just became an adventurer, so her rank is G, and she can also use simple healing magic. Shin states he is also a samurai but can use a bit of lightning and fire magic. The one on his head is Yaha, a monster he has formed a tamer contract with. Gon is impressed that Shin can use magic despite being a samurai and appreciates that he is well liked by monsters. Tsubaki asks if he is from Hinomoto, but Shin says he is not. Tsubaki explains that most samurai are from Hinomoto, and it's her first time meeting a samurai outside of it. She notes that most people want to be knights or warriors, and those who become samurai are often seen as odd. Shin tells her that the samurai class is great, with abilities like ambushing from walls. Tsubaki agrees but finds it strange that they have to train as knights and berserkers to enter the samurai class. Shin acknowledges the class is strong, but Tsubaki still finds it weird. Gon explains that Hinomoto is a unique island nation formed by shifting Earth's crust, with many samurai and ninja guild bases. These people became central to the country's formation, and those wanting to be combatants in Hinomoto admire samurai. Shin asks about the guilds that formed Hinomoto, and Gon lists Kaku, Jetsu, Megan, Carrick, and Kororo Shrine, which are guilds from the game Shin remembers. Gon adds that there were other smaller guilds involved, but they are not well known. Suddenly, the carriage stops as they encounter bandits. The bandits demand the merchant's money and belongings. Shin tells Nak to stay in the carriage and asks Yaha to protect him. They prepare to fight, and Tiara wonders if she can kill humans. She resolves to do it to protect the others. The bandit leader makes lewd comments about Tsubaki, enraging Shin. Tiara notices Shin's dangerous, murderous aura and the hidden bandits in the forest. Despite her fear, she knows she has to fight. Gon warns the bandits to back off, but the leader mocks them, believing their ranks are too low to be a threat. Gon suspects this encounter is not coincidental. Shin and Tsubaki agree they need to extract information from the bandits. Tiara shoots the hidden bandits, and Shin and the others engage in battle. Gon takes down one bandit, Tsubaki uses her speed to defeat another, and Shin defeats two at once. The leader is shocked by their strength and wonders who they are. He thought their weapons would be inferior, but they prove otherwise. Shin, in a rage, approaches the leader and cuts through his sword, beating him up and tying him down. The leader threatens to kill them once free, but Shin demands information about how they knew their details. The leader, scared by Shin's deadly look, hesitates. Tiara then suddenly hugs Shin to calm him down, surprising Tsubaki. After a while, Shin calms down, and Tiara releases him, feeling embarrassed. She had remembered how being hugged by her master calmed her down, so she did the same for Shin, though she is now too embarrassed to face him.